For Phillips Petroleum, a mid-October day during 1958 is remembered as the day Boots saved the shield. It was a typical corporate moment. A young account executive, G. William Anderson, Jr., struggled to meet the needs of his employer, Leppke and Margolis, and his first client, Phillips Petroleum. His goal was to sell Phillips a design service called Corporate Identity. At least $100,000 was on the line. Several weeks before, he fretted as his colleagues presented their ideas. Now everything seemed to be going well. Phillips Vice President of Sales, Ted Lyons, said he loved L&M's new look for Phillips stations. Anderson's optimism, however, was premature. Phillips Chairman Boots Adams hadn't seen the new trademark. When he saw it, he shouted his objection. "We'll keep our shield." This apparently trivial conflict over a trademark which would later twirl above gas stations was more than a debate about marketing. It symbolized a much wider discussion about the role of design in post-war American life. For many Americans, the service station became the center of a debate over how America should look and what values it should champion. The demise of Phillips' old look and the emergence of a new one is a vanishing point, a place where we can see Americans reinventing how they represented themselves. For most of this century, service stations were festooned along America's roadsides, yet few scholars have studied them. John Jackal and Keith Scully, however, are the exception. Their seminal book, The Gas Station in America, examines gasoline marketing. Jackal and Scully's thesis involves a marketing approach they called place product packaging. They claim America's roadsides were modeled by petroleum companies to project clear corporate images onto the landscape. While Jackal and Scully offer a way of talking about gas stations, their approach leaves some voices unheard. For instance, the gas station does more than project a corporate image. It also expresses the aspirations of architects, designers, and dealers. While Jackal and Scully's perspective is important, it doesn't exhaust all the forms of discourse that surround gas stations. This presentation explores the meaning of Phillips Petroleum's post-war service stations as place conversations, sites where architects, marketing professionals, and consumers express their values. Phillips post-war stations were examples of the new look, which was a design aesthetic that became the zeitgeist of the 1950s. Phillips expressed the new look through large display windows, staggered roof lines, brick exteriors, and daring canopies. Jackal and Scully recognized the new look canopy as a marketing tool. They claim, after 1960, the large canopies were adopted widely as advertising gimmick. Canopies carried large signs and engendered a sense of presence. Several canopy styles became popular. The butterfly canopy, attached to the station building and swept upward. Jackal and Scully, who see the butterfly canopy as a gimmick, overlook its functional and symbolic meanings. If we examine it carefully, we find the new look canopy was more than an ornament. It represented dynamic cultural forces. Studying a new look station is a slippery endeavor. Few stations remain as they were originally built. When a site is successful, or traffic is conducive to gasoline sales, a station has the cash flow that attracts owners to use up-to-date marketing methods. When a site is unsuccessful, a station may be abandoned. Although finding an unaltered new look station is difficult, documents in Phillips' archives let us see the stations and hear how post-war America talked. Thousands of Phillips new look stations once dotted America's roadways. The few that remain are the residue of Phillips' post-war expansion program. These stations are examples of what designer Brooke Stevens called planned obsolescence. Gas stations represent this because they are periodically redesigned to stimulate demand. Phillips' executive committee worried about the company's dated image. For instance, during 1958, they noted that their shield wasn't as modern as competitive signs. Phillips, therefore, spent time and money updating its image. It tested new ideas in Florida, where Phillips first expanded its territory. During 1956, Phillips grafted a flamboyant canopy onto a new-look service station at a Fort Lauderdale marina called Pier 66. For Phillips, this experimental station was a step toward changing its image. A few years later, its distinctive canopies soared nationwide. Phillips launched its new look in three waves. The first began during the early 1950s when Phillips introduced rock-face stations known as rock frames. The second began in late 1959 when Phillips' existing stations were remodeled. A new trademark, red harlequins, were painted on Phillips stations. During the early 1960s, the third wave began. New stations called harlequins were introduced. Harlequins are distinguished by a pointed canopy that soared from the building. We can understand why Phillips believed new stations were needed by examining a June 15, 1957 Saturday Evening Post. Its cover featured this George Hughes rendering. The editor said, "High-speed pikes are wonderful inventions, except for a few bugs that need to be ironed out, such as exit signs moving by too fast." The troublemaking picture represented how highways place motorists in an uncharted sea of new traveling rules. For instance, what should a motorist do after missing an exit? Back up? Speed? The editor retorted, "Real moot questions, eh?" Phillips also wrestled with these changes. It searched for the appropriate images which synchronized the service station with what a pure oil ad inside the magazine called America's Second Automobile Revolution. Pure said dramatic developments were underway which would change America's face. These included a $100 billion network of freeways, new strip cities and shopping centers. Pure claimed the second automobile revolution promised us to change the industry as dramatically as the first did, and on triple the scale. It promised a new breed of service station that analysts are studying to meet future needs. While my discussion so far has examined Phillips' expansion plan, there are other voices that need to be heard. One of these voices was the architect Clarence Reinhardt, who began his career at Phillips in 1928. Reinhardt, whose designs featured airport-like simplicity, imagined highways as places to demonstrate his architectural skills. Reinhardt's peers also imagined roadsides as places to express their prowess. They did this through a visual trope, the new-look canopy. By the late 1950s, canopies were de rigueur. Any up-to-date commercial building had one. Trade journals explained how architects interpreted them. For instance, during 1957, the National Petroleum News said, "A swept-wing canopy defines the station in the motorist's mind with progress in the latest advances in engineering design." Thus, by the time Reinhardt's canopy beckoned motorists, it was a symbol of progress. Although Reinhardt used a widely circulated symbol of innovation, archival records indicate he was inspired by early 1950s Los Angeles drive-ins, not swept-wing stations. Reinhardt, during 1951, took a fact-finding trip to Los Angeles, where he studied drive-ins. Reinhardt's report discussed an essential element of drive-in success, eye-popping architecture. The first drive-in Reinhardt described was Tiny Nailers in Hollywood. Tiny, by the way, was neither tiny or nailers. "This building," said Humphrey Bogart, "looked like a huge bird about to take off." Reinhardt's stations, designed after the trip, used drive-in styling. His soaring canopy made sense. It spoke automobile culture. Phillips' new look also spoke the language of New York-based marketing professionals. Just months before Phillips built Harlequins nationwide, the building initiated a $16 million makeover of its existing stations. A bold red and white color scheme replaced Phillips' tan and maroon colors. Since the stakes were high, Phillips consulted Leppke and Margulis, a firm known for its corporate identity makeovers. L&M excelled at promoting total design packages with abstract trademarks. Their head of research was a former Harvard Business School professor, Mike Helfgott. He used scientific market research to probe the complex secrets of customer appeal. L&M studied Phillips' existing stations. It found customers did not associate cleanliness or superior quality products with Phillips' existing colors. Most importantly, the old colors did not give the feeling of bigness. The spacious display look was missing. They disappeared when placed near bright shopping centers. L&M's major objective, according to account executive G. William Anderson, Jr., was to design a logo which could be internally lit for maximum impact. It recommended replacing Phillips' old 6-point shield trademark with a contemporary 3-point one. When Phillips chairman Boots Adams saw the trademark, he shouted, "As long as I am running the company, we'll keep our present shield." The 30-year-old trademark was sacred. Despite this conflict over tradition and modernism, L&M got the account. Eventually, both the 66 and shield were kept, but their designs were simplified and colors changed. Now they would stand out in the competitively bright suburbs. After changing the shield, L&M radically altered station color schemes. On the exterior, a unique harlequin between the bay doors, according to a company newsletter, adds to the instant recognition value of the color scheme. It lent a look of action, a spacious, more appealing appearance. According to Anderson, the triangles point-to-point worked in solving a difficult design problem to unify the many architectural styles of the company's filling stations. While the new look represented a way of unifying existing stations, Phillips brochures encouraged dealers to lease new ones. In these brochures, we find Phillips talking to dealers who had their own concerns about aesthetics and economics. One brochure stressed the station's customer appeal. It described the stations as looking neat, inviting, and identifiable. It offered an eye-catching and pleasing composition. The brochure also explained the station's symbolic meaning. The pointed shape and supporting pylon are distinctive designs, conveying to the motoring public that this is another advanced Phillips station. Another brochure claimed the exterior of the station changed to conform to propulsion age airflow design. Phillips also told dealers about the station's functional improvements. For example, the Bright New Designs brochure said, "For station serviceability, no other design excels the twin canopy DS203. It claimed the value of the canopy lies in its protection-providing feature, its eye appeal, and the additional lighting it provides." A 1960 brochure extolled the Harlequin's efficiency. For instance, it claimed the window area permits salesmen to readily see customers. This should contribute to quicker service. The slanted stalls and improved visibility, it claimed, reduced traffic hazards. Finally, it said the storage room was handy as a pocket, easy to work from. Phillips stressed the improved lighting. Lights were recessed in the roof's overhangs, over stall entrances, and beneath the canopy. This improved lighting, Phillips said, should contribute materially to additional night sales. The station's functional and aesthetic qualities were more than gimmicks. This woman, by the way, may be driving in park. Besides offering styling that Phillips believed dealers wanted, New Look stations addressed the concerns of women, America's unpaid chauffeurs who made two-car families commonplace. The New Look that Phillips thought would attract women was part of a middle-class cultural milieu that democratized luxury. If we listen to design critics, we find America's middle class used the New Look to express their values and create a sense of identity. For instance, critic Thomas Hine recognizes the style as a visual trope he calls populux. The middle class, he claims, imagined itself as plucking the fruits of capitalism. It expressed this belief through New Look styling. During the late 1950s, designers came to the same conclusion. For instance, the symbolic meaning of the New Look was explained in Industrial Design magazine. ID's article about bowling alleys discussed how both AMF and Brunswick searched for status. According to ID, New Look bowling alleys symbolized middle-class values. The new style represented bowling moving away from an older ethnic working-class setting to a new suburban middle-class one. Advertising copywriters and art directors who shared an aesthetic code with industrial designers spoke populux. For instance, Phillips' ad agency J. Walter Thompson exploited the pointed canopy's meaning as a status symbol. TV ads produced during 1962 advised motorists to go first class. A good example is this one. Its parallel structure uses canopies to symbolize luxury.
These people obviously like to go first class. That first class feeling, there's nothing like it.
Go first class, go Phillips 66. Go first class, all the way.
First class all the way, which is why they like to stop at the sign of Phillips 66. For at Phillips 66, you get first class treatment at no extra cost. First class service that's prompt, courteous, and friendly. First class products like Phillips gasolines that actually give you power to spare. And the first class extras that come so naturally to all Phillips 66 dealers. That's why we say,
go first class, go Phillips 66.
It costs no more.
During the mid-1960s, Phillips ads trumpeted performance. Nonetheless, the station remained a symbol of luxury. For instance, this ad played with the Harlequin's Las Vegas-like nouveau riche style and presents gasoline as a high-octane aphrodisiac.
Hi there, fill it up with flight fuel?
No, listen, I just want a dollar's worth, see, because I got my new girl in the car with me here, and I want to run out of gas, you know, just outside of town.
Well, you know, this is Phillips flight fuel gasoline, and a dollar's worth is going to take you a long, long way. It's going to take you a long, long way. A long, long way. A long, long way.
Oh, Merlin, look, we're in Las Vegas.
Las Vegas?
While we're here, why don't we get married? Guess what? I'm married, and this is my husband Merlin, and he's wonderful. Have you seen his face?
Just fill her up.
No, just $1's worth.
At Phillips 66, it's performance that counts.
During 1968, Phillips began testing environmentally friendly ranch-style stations. According to Phillips marketing engineer Cliff Souza, several factors led Phillips to change designs. Here's his response to the question, what about the Harlequin?
That was radical at the time, and it lived past its time. It was something that carried on, and it should have gone years before.
Why did people hang on?
There was a shift in people's attitudes about commercial architecture. The gas station became a symbol of what was wrong and needed to be changed in American life. For instance, John Kenneth Galbraith articulated the concern in Life magazine. He said the service station was the most repellent piece of architecture of the past 2,000 years. Galbraith was hyperbolic. Nevertheless, criticism of the symbol of affluence became a sport. For instance, Fortune published an article that said, of all the elements that make up the visual mess along U.S. roadsides, none is more unnecessarily ugly than the service station. Banners flap wildly for attention. Lurid, harshly lighted signs spell out trade names. Although Fortune described Phillips stations as better than average prototypes, some supporters of Lady Bird Johnson's Highway Beautiful movement didn't agree. They promoted domesticated blend-in stations, so many municipalities required that style. By the late 1960s, blend-in became the new symbol of advancement. Moreover, blend-in stations robbed sales from other outlets. For instance, Shell, which built ranch-style stations, achieved better than average sales. P.C. Thomas, Shell's vice president of marketing, said, "We think the design of our stations is one reason for this growth." Souza, when asked why Phillips delayed introducing a new station, says it was the architect who resisted change. Reinhardt was fond of his design. He then offers another reason for the Harlequin's demise.
Why was it selected?
For one person who would not change, and he was not an executive.
Who was that?
Clarence Reinhardt. He was in the engineering department. And he'd come back, and we can't change that design because this is this and this is that. And just think of marketing when the trend started with campers on the back of vehicles, and you couldn't get under that canopy. See, we were losing business. And so when marketing took over, we got rid of that right away. We went to freestanding canopies.
During the 1970s, Phillips altered Harlequin stations through top hatting. Phillips advised dealers to install mansard roofs. It removed or replaced pointed canopies and repainted stations with dark colors. With these modifications, the Harlequin lost its exuberant appearance. Phillips dealers struggled to interpret these changes. The passage of time, however, makes it difficult to find their voices. Bob Peter, who operates a Harlequin station, is one of them. His father began leasing this Glendale, Wisconsin station in 1969. Peter sees the survival of his nearly unaltered Harlequin as a fight to preserve his values as a mechanic and a businessman. He recalls several events that threatened his station. The most traumatic was when Phillips, which faced dwindling profits, tripled the rent. Then it wanted to close the station and sell it to McDonald's. Peter sued. Eventually he bought the station and became a marathon dealer. Peter imagines the station is speaking for him. For example, when asked why he hasn't changed the station, Peter says, "I like the different style. Moreover," he claims, "the new seesaws are bland. The other stuff is just a box." When asked why he hasn't installed a square canopy to shelter customers, Peter defends the retro style. "We have full service." He then points to the canopy and explains how he thwarted Marathon's desire to top hat his station. He hand-painted blue stripes on it. "They wanted us to install a new canopy," says Peter, "but I wouldn't change it. The building has style." The irony of painting Marathon stripes on Phillips' flamboyant canopy illustrates a remarkable transformation. While Phillips imagined its marketing voice firmly placed on the landscape, the meanings of that voice slipped. Motorists, for instance, created their own interpretations. They imagined Harlequins as extensions of their driveways. Phillips archivist Kathy Treble says opposition to Phillips' raising of its flagship twin canopy Harlequin in Bartlesville, Oklahoma was strong. A receptionist at the Bartlesville Art Museum claims people were dismayed. They wondered where they would fill their kids' bike tires. The station that once meant luxury now represented a corporation not listening to their voices. It was a shocking reminder of how Americans reinvent their everyday lives. Phillips demolished the station under the subterfuge of night. A few miles away, Phillips built a new Kix convenience store, which placed the voices of another group of design professionals onto America's landscape.